can you go back? Jared, I'm sorry. Advice, article library. So Kim has been recreating some of the articles, and we have populated the articles, and we just found a Plumeria database. Mr. Wright, Mr. Atkinson, Diana Donnelly, and Tex created years ago that had, you remember that, Mark? Has some great articles that we're going to be populating up on the website. So today's website is light years better than what we had. So you get a chance, send people to it. Last one, Jason, join the PSA. Or Jared, why am I calling you Jason? And you're wearing a cowboy shirt too, I shouldn't be upset. Choose an option. So what we're really looking at, members, new and old, is to go online because we capture all the information digitally. If you'll click an option, just pick either, okay, there it is. 1 year, add it to the cart. So this is just shopping. This is like if you're on Amazon, so to speak. When you check out, it does a couple things. One, we grab all your information. Two, it sends you a receipt if you get a receipt via your credit card. Three, and this has been the most important thing we've been lacking, it sends out a notification. So even if you're an existing member and you renew, you're going to get a notification email with a link to the backdoor newsletter. So we're going to be able to let you see, if you were to join today, you would see January's. If you join after this meeting, you'll see January and March. But John Q. Public won't be able to see that. It's just a link for everybody to get caught up to date, so to speak. So the website, if you can, promote it wherever you can. Facebook gets a lot of traffic, but the website is getting new traffic. We switched to Squares. We've gotten away from PayPal, much more secure. Fees are roughly the same. Rick, you had a question? Oh, fees are roughly the same. So it doesn't really change anything there. It's just more secure for us. That is the website. That's something else I needed to talk about. Sale is coming up, both sales, June. We do have a May meeting here. Food's getting brought out. It's all finger foods today. The ladies have merchandise in the back, membership, anybody needing to renew. Mark, I think that about covers it. Kim? Okay then. I'm sure she will correct me. Kim, anything else I need to discuss? Well, about everything. We're not married, by the way, but I get the same thing. We discussed the website, we discussed the new payment, we discussed the articles, we discussed newsletters. We welcomed everybody. Oh, board members in attendance. For those who do not know, John Burford, president, and if you're looking to run for office, please approach us today. We need officers. It's an election year. Kim Orsak, vice president. Wendy Kane, treasurer. Lori Powell, secretary. Directors, Mike Atkinson is in California. Lisa Meyer. Donna Christie, that little rascal. She is at Astro Spring Training. They made a Florida trip, went and saw Tex and Carol and everything, and I saw she stuck some plants in her car, and then she went to spring training. So Astro fans, you got to have a little conversation with her when she gets back. Anything else?
And then Jason.
Oh, Jason. Cowboy. Oh, yes. So we have Kim, Jason, Miller, and Wendy have formed the committee for the scholarship. So that's moving forward. The form has been sent out.
Jason, do you want to come up and kind of give an update on that since you're the chairman of this committee?
I'm done until afterwards. But seriously, if you want to run for office or consider it, let us know. Rachel,
This year.
not to
for
put you on the
office-
spot.
This year for office, the president position is available, the treasurer position is available, and all three directors,
Several directors.
based on the vote from last year.
Yeah.
All right, this is Jason Miller. He is our chairman for our scholarship committee. And I'm gonna let him kind of update you on where we're at with that.
All right, so, me, Kim, and Wendy met a couple weeks ago,
Not yet close.
and came up with a form for the students to fill out. We got that all emailed out to the Houston area, counties. And if anybody has any questions, want to know what counties we sent it to, I do have a list of them. I'm just not gonna take our time and try to name every one of them, but it should cover most of our area here in the Seabrook area and our majority of our membership. Yes,
The scholarship for students who are studying agriculture.
it's based on horticulture. And that's what we're gonna try to give the first priority to is horticulture students. And then we're also gonna look at agriculture or related fields.
Can I
Yes,
spread the information to Montgomery County?
Montgomery County already has it. I've already sent it to them.
Okay, because Montgomery County does a scholarship, but more money would be nice.
So, yeah, it's already been sent to Montgomery,
The extension,
through the ag department.
okay.
What we did is we sent it out to the directors
Right.
at each of the districts that are in the areas where all of our members are, our Houston area members are. And then from there, they will send it to all of their individual ag departments. And then that will then get dispersed to the students.
Make sure they got it.
Okay, yeah, please do
Yes,
follow up, because we want kids to apply.
yes.
Is it college students?
It's incoming, it's for incoming freshmen or income, just graduated, high school senior.
Or any type of college? either.
For any type, yes.
Which university?
Yes,
Yes.
And what, like, what is the amount?
it's gonna be, we're
$1,000.
$1,000. No,
No.
we're gonna look for, at least try to get 5. But it's also gonna be based on our applicants, how many applicants we get. So generally, we're looking at 1,005.
Any other questions about the scholarship program? At this point, the applications have to be postmarked by April 28th. And then we will meet on May 5th because we're really trying to make sure that we get this money out to the students for their for the fall semester. The money will be mailed directly to the universities under that student's ID number. So it'll be a one-time payment. It's not gonna be something that we give half now and half. I just felt like that was gonna be an easier route for us to take. So one-time payment to the university under that student's ID, so it can be used to either purchase their books or whatever, or they, just add to help them out.
Any other questions? Okay. Guess we can start eating.
No, not yet. Not yet. Final announcement, before we introduce our guest speakers, is the Growing Friends Garden Club. It has been growing, and we've already, last month, we went to Enchanted Gardens. The socialization of that has been really, really fun. It's been an opportunity to get to know other people that come to our meetings, but maybe since we only have the 4 or 5 meetings a year, we see a face, we see a name, but it's really getting to a point now that we've done it for a year, and we've gone every single month except for December. We didn't go in December or because anyway, it's really a neat opportunity. If you are available during the day, you can sign up. If you are already on my list, getting my email and maybe you just haven't had the opportunity, hasn't worked out in your schedule, then you don't need to sign up because you are not going off my list, okay? So if you're new and you would like to sign up, I'll leave this up here on the stage and I'll try to remind you a little bit later, but it's just an opportunity to come out, socialize. We go to a garden center and then we go out to eat lunch together and then we kind of disperse. It's kind of just a fun way to say, hey, what's going on in your world? What's going on in your garden? And it's not just about plumerias. We walk through the garden centers because most of us who grow plumerias grow a lot of other things as well. Next, I need to introduce our guest speaker. And it's such a perfect time because we have so many cool cuttings and stuff like that to get out to you at the end of this with our raffle. And I'm going to let John talk about where we got these cuttings from and things like that later on. But our guest speaker, Mark Wright, he's past president of the Plumeria Society of America. He is a grower, and definitely I would consider him an expert if you have any questions on plumerias, or probably any other thing too. He is very, very, very knowledgeable. He's also in charge of the plumeria registration. So if we wanted to register a new plumeria, he's your guy. So, no further ado, Mark Wright.
Okay, my name is Mark Wright. She's correct on that. I was president of the PSA 3 separate terms, 2 years each. I've been growing plumerias for 32 years, and I've never had an original thought in my life. I have, like a sponge, I steal everything from everybody else, and I remember it forever. So what I have here is a program on how to root cuttings. I'm not telling you you have to do this. I'm telling you it's what I do. After so many years of rooting cuttings, I find this to be the easiest for me, and it works well. And I have a high percentage doing it. Whether or not you want to do it, just, it's up to you, but just hear me out. I'm going to save all the questions and answers for the end. So let me continue because I lose my train of thought and I ramble. My wife knows I do that and she will get on me. So first of all, to root a cutting, what's the first thing you got to do? You got to get a cutting. Now, where do you get a cutting? Well, you can buy them, or somebody can give you one. You can take a cutting off your own plant, or if you have a hurricane barrel, or a squirrel, or high winds, or anything else, you get lots of free cuttings in your yard, and you just have to clean them up. I got so many cuttings from barrel, I filled up trash cans and threw them away. Nothing else I could do. But yeah, you've got to get the cutting first, and then you got to be able to prepare the cutting for rooting. And I don't want to hear anybody talking about borrowing a cutting from somebody's tree down the street without asking them. This is not an acceptable method. Okay. To take the cutting, you need tools. My favorite tool to take cuttings off of trees is this. It leaves a nice clean cut. This is a PVC pipe cutter, plastic pipe. It'll open up real wide. You can take cuttings. If it's bigger than that, you just have to have a saw. I don't like to take cuttings bigger than that. But with this pipe cutter, you can take the cutting, and I usually try to cut the cutting where the cutting is flat at the bottom. Then if your tree is an upright tree and you have a flat cut at the top, that's going to have to be cut at a slant. So I do that later. When you take the cutting, I found that cinnamon works good on the tree. This is what's left. This is what is still standing in your pot or in your yard. As far as the cutting goes, this, it's dusting sulfur. This is sulfur with water, and you can see right now, it separates out. But if you shake it up, it's ready to dip the cutting in. So you take the cutting, you swish it around in this liquid right here, and you set it somewhere where it's horizontal for a while and wait till it quits dripping. About the time it quits dripping, this is sulfur again. This is powdered sulfur, it's not wet. You dip the cut in into that, and then you want to stand it up in a bucket. I always use perlite. Perlite only keeps the cutting from moving around. And that's the most important part about taking the cutting. You have to callus it. If you don't get a callus on the cutting, it'll rot. Now, some cuttings never callus. And this is a good thing to know because the cuttings that never callus are probably ones you don't want to root in the first place. They probably would be much better off being grafted. Now, that's another subject, but if you have trouble grafting, you know, you need to learn to do it because cuttings that root, but they don't do well here in the wintertime are pretty much, you're just wasting your time. And I can go through a big long list. I quit trying to grow, that one from Jim Little many years ago, Makaha Sun. I couldn't ever have grafted, rooted, it made no difference. It would die every winter, so I finally just gave up on it. I haven't been able to grow some of the other harder ones, but if you have a lot of trouble rooting them, you need to graft it. Okay, we've got the cinnamon and the thing, and there's you're dipping them in the ends right there.
Now, Mark, are you allowing that to dry before you put the perlite?
Yeah, you let it quit dripping. I told you, you dip it into the liquid mix. And Rick Stone used to tell me that he would take a cutting and he would swish it in the swimming pool as long as his wife wasn't looking. Water will make them quit dripping too, but it takes a little while. So you want to swish it, and this keeps, you ever take a lot of cuttings, you look at them after a few days, they're black on the end? That's a fungus. This keeps that from happening. And that's why I also will dip it in the powder. So you can put it down in the perlite. You don't water the perlite.
You don't want it from
Cuttings will callus better if they're standing up. Now, in the springtime, people used to say, the only way you can take a cutting is you take the cutting in the spring, put it in a gallon pot, you put it out on the pavement in full sun, and that's the only way you're gonna do it. And you don't water it. You water it the first day, you don't water it again for 8 to 10 weeks. Okay, that works pretty good in California. I bet it works in Hawaii too. It works here to a certain degree, as long as it doesn't get hot on you. If it gets hot on you, you bake them. You imagine taking somebody from Ireland with red hair and taking them to the beach and saying, you don't need sunscreen or a hat? Well, it's the same thing. Plumerias will sunburn, especially when they don't have leaves, and cuttings normally don't have leaves. That's what, when you take the cutting, you use this to leave about a ½ inch to an inch of stem left, cut all the leaves off. They'll fall off on their own. Okay, in the springtime, I just put the cuttings directly into the perlite in the bucket. As it starts getting hotter in the year, and people who tell you you can't root cuttings in the summer, they are wrong. You can root cuttings easier in the summer than you can in the spring. But I will take these cuttings, once they quit bleeding, I'll take the plastic wrap like this, I think this is, they use it at the post office or something. Works real good on cuttings. You take about a 6-inch piece of it and you set the cutting in the middle of it, and you pull it up and twist it. And then you put one of these nice little zip ties on it. And that will keep it from losing moisture, and it allows it to callus faster. So that's one of the processes you want to use when it's hot outside. You can root with water in the heat of the summer. You want to put the calloused cutting into a bucket standing straight up. But you want to check it pretty often, and as soon as you see the root nodules start to form, okay. As soon as you see the root nodules start to form, you want to get it planted. Because water roots do not transfer to soil very easily, they'll die off. So you want to do this fast. Just when you see the nodules, it's ready to go. And they root real fast, but you want that done in the shade as much as possible, and you can pour the water to them because they don't have to be kept dry. Not when it's 100 degrees outside. Now, I like the gang root, and that's why I use the buckets, because the more you've got in the bucket, the less likely they are to move around, and disturbing them is bad. You'll break little feeder roots. You can also root in plastic bags. It's not my preferred method, but a lot of people like doing it, and it is an easy way to do it. But you have a small, I use jewelry bags because they're serrated on the edges and they will allow moisture to get out. You don't want to keep it too wet. And you use this on the top again to keep that little bit of moisture in the bag. It should be calloused before you stick it in the bag. And you want to use, you can use core, you can use potting soil, but you want to cut it about 50-50 with perlite. That'll keep it from getting too wet. Now, you can do the old method of rooting in the pot like everybody used to do, but you want to make sure that it's calloused. I can't emphasize enough how important the callus is to rooting a plumeria. So just remember, you need to get that callus, and the callus looks like it's starting to swell at the bottom, and it gets this lip all the way around the edge, and it'll start to push roots out. You'll see little nodules all the way around it. And that's the time to get it planted. Yeah, that top picture there is pulling it out of the perlite. When you've had it standing up, you can see it's already got roots. That one will take off real quick. And you can do a lot of these in a day. It's not gonna take a long time. You just set up everything and you can really go through them. Usually I do quite a few cuttings at a time. I went off the rails on plumeria about 20-something years ago, and I probably have 300 of them at the moment. And my goal is to get down to 60 or 70 of my favorites. So I'm going to have a lot of cuttings, and I have to process a lot of cuttings. So this works good for me because I am trying to get rid of them. Okay, when you're taking cuttings and you're doing all this, I will suggest that you try to clean your tools. If you cut limbs off of one tree, you don't have to clean your tools in between. Because if that tree's got something, it's got it everywhere. So you don't have to worry about it. When you are going to move to another tree, I have found that if you have something like this, this works really good. It won't kill the mosaic virus, but it'll clean the sap off of these things here. If the sap dries, this won't keep anything from rusting. And if you got something squeaky, it lasts about 10 minutes. But if you got plumeria sap all over everything, it works really good. And it's usually pretty cheap. So you can clean your tools with that. Then I have found that this, which is a little butane torch, which is refillable. It's 1,500 degrees. 1,500 degrees will kill the frangipani virus. So if you just swipe this back and forth for a few seconds on one side, a few seconds on the other side, your tools are sterilized. That's the only thing I know that'll really, you can soak them and you can Clorox, you can do whatever you want to. It doesn't kill the virus. I use it on all the tools, even like these. These work really good when you take cuttings and the tree isn't real firm, they tend to split. You can use this, which is a finish saw for doing fancy woodwork. They used to be really cheap at Harbor Freight. There's not much cheap at Harbor Freight anymore, but they usually, I think they were $4 or $5 at one time. I don't know what they are now. This is a little cutter. These, they come in real handy. When you've got these wrapped around something, they'll get in and cut it in real close quarters. So they work really well. That bigger stuff that I was talking about cutting, these work real good. It's fine tooth, you get a good cut, it's fast, yet it doesn't tear up the host tree. Now, I've had a lot of help over the years, and I've learned a lot of this from other people. I would say that probably Rick Stone and Emerson Willis helped me a lot many years ago. I've had a lot of help from Mark Terrell and George over there, George Haji George. I have, like I say, I've absorbed a lot of things from a lot of people. And this works extremely well for me, and it may not work for you. But if you give it a shot, it probably could. Okay. Now, my soil mix is pretty much potting soil. Any good name brand, some brands are better than others. But I use a lot of bark mulch and a lot of perlite in it. This aids in drainage, and the bark mulch, particularly pine bark, will decompose, giving a lot of beneficial elements to the soil as the plant's growing. And then bigger cuttings like the one there on the bottom, I use a lot of bamboo stakes. And if you put 2 or 3 bamboo stakes in there, plants will root easy. If you get a lot of wind or they blow over, you'll break roots off. So in order to keep from setting yourself back, you want to make sure they're staked well. And once the roots are out, you can take the stakes out of them and they're fine. But you just have to learn to adapt with the temperature. The milder temperatures, you can have them out where they get some sun, they can get watered on. It doesn't make much difference, but as the hotter it gets, the more sun you get, you gotta have them in the shade. And I usually stick them back behind all the plumerias against the fence, because that's the most likely place to have shade most of the day. I will tell you that planting, cuttings late in the year, you want to pay particular concern in the wintertime here. If this year we had our now annual week of freezing weather, and if you can't get water to them, they'll get dry and you'll lose roots. I've probably lost more plants this winter than I have in a long time, mainly because the greenhouse got crammed full of plumerias and I couldn't get in there and water, and I didn't want to overwater, so a lot of stuff the roots died, and I've got it sitting on heat mats, so it's going to still lose moisture from the soil. So just be careful if you can in the wintertime. There's no predicting the weather here anymore, so. Any questions? Yes.
Virus that you were talking about, how do you identify?
Usually, well, you can have a plant that has the virus for years and not even know it. But, what will happen is you'll have unusual streaking or discoloration on the blooms. Sometimes in the summer, when it gets really, really hot or you've had a lot of rain, it occurs. You'll probably at the same time, in the stem that goes to the leaf, you'll have red pigment forming in that stem. And that is generally an indication of the virus. There's a lot of plants that do fine with the virus. That's why I'm careful going from plant to plant, cutting the leaves. Because it'll spread by sap. You cut leaves off of a tree with its virus and off the tree that's next to it, it's not virus. You'll give that plant the virus. Now, is it gonna kill the plant? Probably not. But until there's no known cure for the virus, you can destroy the plant, but I don't see any reason to as long as you're careful. You can still enjoy it. Yes.
I had a lot more dried tips amongst those that I stored in the garage.
I'm gonna go ahead and let y'all, because the people on Zoom and the people in the back can't hear the questions and then.
I had more dried tips and damage this winter than I have had other winters amongst the plants that I've either pulled out of the ground and took the dirt off the roots for the most part, or cuttings. They didn't make it through the winter. I would have thought it would have been better with it being a little warmer winter than usual. Any ideas?
When I have the most problems, I usually have plants that aren't dried out when I put them up. Now, you say you knocked all the dirt off?
Some I do, some I don't. It's always worked good for years. This winter, even the ones I cut and put, I'll leave them in the winter in bags or whatever. This year I had the end tip. Several surprised me that the tips dried up. I'm cutting them off and seeing what happens.
I only had one plant that about the top half of it died. It got the garage rot, as I call it. I don't know what it is, but it has to do with the cold weather. This year was unusual in that it stayed warm for so long and abnormally warm. And then it snowed for 3 days or whatever it was and stayed below freezing for 2 or 3 days. And it took about a week for it to warm up. And I think that sudden change is as hard on them as anything. In my garage, I don't have any heat, but I have an insulated garage door and I have a little electric heater, and then I put a fan in there to circulate the air. As long as you keep the temperature above freezing and there's no wind on them, generally they're okay. If you had a lot of rot this year, I would suspect it had something to do with them usually mine will do that if it rains a lot right before you put them up.
People want to hear what you're saying.
I have a refrigerator and a freezer, and even in the cold 2021, I was fine. It's fine, and I am suspecting it might have been because it was a warmer winter, because I haven't been there as long as usual anyway. I just don't know, and I didn't lose all, I didn't lose any. There were tips that were kind of normally happen.
I think I've actually seen a lot of that this year. This year, the young man, I have an older gentleman who had lost his wife, and we had to cut off a lot of tips on his as well. In my garage, I had some that had never done that before. But over the last 2 seasons, one thing that I have noticed and that I can kind of start putting 2 and 2 together is the ones that are doing so well in December, because it was a warm winter, like Mark was saying. The ones that were doing super, super well, and that's still like fully leaved out, and then suddenly, boom, overnight, I've got to either cut those leaves off and get them in there. Those are the ones that my tips dry up, and I think that even with the Charlies, even cutting those leaves off, they end up sucking a lot of the moisture out of those tips. The other thing that I kind of wanted to think about, do you look down here in this area on the coast?
Yes.
Our sea fog and our humidity was so bad right after that frost that I really think no matter where you stored them, unless they were upstairs in your house, it was probably a little bit more difficult to keep them dry, even though, and I kind of think what you were saying, the moisture. And I didn't lose any plants, but I lost beautiful tips, and it kind of, so yeah. Is that kind of what you experienced?
Yes.
Well, I used to take mine in over the 4-day Thanksgiving holiday. And then I would bring them out sometime in March. And I gave up on that Thanksgiving holiday years ago. They go in before Halloween now. Mainly because our weather is so unpredictable. And how do you move 300 plumerias after work one night? You don't. So you've got to plan ahead. So it takes me 3 days to put 300 plumerias up somewhere. And my wife still has a place to sleep. But no, if you get them in, well, before it gets cold, they have a chance to acclimate better. And I start cutting leaves on the things like 2 to 3 weeks before I take them in.
That's what I was gonna say. Any of my plumeria who had the opportunity to go dormant on their own, leaves fell off outside and everything, none of those, so if I've got 200, 150, I probably only had like 10, what we're talking about, because those were the 10 that were still seem to be doing well. But unlike Mark, when I live down on the coast, I don't pull mine in until the forecast says next week it's gonna freeze, because 3 or 4 consecutive years, I never had to pull them in at all because it never dropped below 40 degrees here. And I'm not going to do all that work unless it's going to do it. And even now I do it for 3 days. So I don't know. It was a year where we had a little bit of that though, I think.
If you want to slow a plumeria down and get it ready for storage, you got to cut off its food source. And the leaves are the food source. They're the ones that produce the photosynthesis and the sugars for that plant to survive. If you cut the leaves off and the stems fall off, that plant's going to slow down. It's going to go into a hibernation. And I did have some start to leaf back out into the garage, but as they dried out, those leaves fell off of them. And, I think that part of wintering does you more good than a lot of other stuff that you can do. You got to get them slowed down. Yes.
Mark, one of your bullets up there was pot size. Can you speak to pot size? Mark, can you speak to pot size and rules of thumb to use, especially with regard to rooting cuttings?
Okay, most cuttings you take, including most of these over here, I would put into a gallon pot. Mainly because you can control the water in a gallon pot easier than you can, say, a 5-gallon pot. If you have a way of keeping it under cover, then your 5-gallon pot's fine, and it's easier to stake a huge cutting. But you got to worry more about rain. When we get rain, we don't get rain in showers, we get buckets full. And so you want to go on to that plant. Because a plant without root doesn't need as much water as one with roots, of course. You want to coax the roots out. But I put almost everything into a 1 or 2 gallon pot.
How do you salvage dehydrated cuttings?
Well, the best thing you can do is put them in a 5-gallon bucket or some type of bucket. I mean, if you don't, I've got a swimming pool, so I get chlorine tablets in big buckets. Those work fine, but if you don't have a bucket, you can go to Home Depot or Lowe's and buy one of their 5-gallon buckets with their nice emblem and name on it. And, you fill it up with water. You can use root stimulator if you want to, but I never do. I just fill it up with water and stand the cutting in there, upright. And it will plump up. When I used to get plants from Thailand, they would come in sometimes kind of shriveled, and I would soak them in water in buckets, and they would plump back up.
When you can do that, it's like if you have like a Tupperware, depending on the size, but just a small tub, and you can take an entire cutting, and lay it down in the water. And, kind of Mike Kennedy and I found a cutting that he had in his yard, that one of his yard guys, of Jackie, that had just fallen down, we were walking through there. It hadn't have been there probably 3 or 4 or 5 days, it was pretty shriveled up, and he gave it to me. That plant is a beautiful plant right now in my yard. I left it in that, soaking medium, just soaking there with a little bit of, super dry, and, it pumped right back up, and then I was able to callus it and go through all the steps that I talked about. So sometimes if it's a smaller cutting, you can just put the whole thing in, because those plants absorb water through their roots. And a lot of times if you see them shriveling up while you're rooting them, but you don't want to add any more water to the base, you can spritz them, and that's what they kind of do in a commercial environment.
Most of them I've seen here, to be perfectly honest with you, I would cut them off and recallus. Because some of them were dipped in wax, but some of them have totally dead bottoms, like a ½ inch to an inch up. I think I would recut them and callus them.
This one,
Oh, yeah, see the hole in it where it's cavitated? Yeah, this one's pretty good and it's starting to swell at the bottoms. This one, you probably wouldn't have to do that. Stuff like this, I would definitely cut it off to where it's all white.
but it's still a quality, it's still a good cutting. It's
Yeah.
just that- Things are found when you start reading. I have very
Well, you can do that, or you can actually stake the plant in the ground next to the pot, unless you don't,
But I'm just saying there's a problem.
Right. Right, well, they need to be supported where you don't want to disturb the roots.
How long before you can expect bloom?
Some of them will bloom that same year. Some of them might take 2 or 3 years. It depends on the cutting. If they take a cutting off of a limb that was gonna bloom the next year anyway, chances are it will. If it bloomed and then they take a cutting with 3 short tips, it probably won't. If that answers your question.
You didn't hear the question? I just want to know how do you handle when you've got a cutting that's also got an inflow? Do you let the inflow go and try to read it at the same time?
I'll let it go unless. Hello?
Yeah. What you didn't hear, the question was, if you have a cutting that also has an inflow, does he allow that inflow and flower to continue to grow while it is rooting? So you hear mixed. I just want to know.
I will generally let it stay on there unless it is taking an abnormally long time to root. Then if it's not rooting or it looks like it's not doing well, I will take it off. I don't like to make any more cuts than what's already been done.
Ever notice that pinks or reds take a little longer to root than like a white, yellow, anything? Like I have some white yellows that, you can almost do anything to them and they'll root. And then I held on to a Pink or Scott Pratt or something and done everything by the book and just, you know, and it just doesn't want to root.
One of my favorite things from listening to people, especially on Facebook or whatever, people ask, what do I do with this cutting? And they'll tell them, just stick it in the ground. They root easy. Good luck with your slaughter pink or your Aztec gold, because that's about all that does that. If it's easy to root, they'll root in the ground and loose soil flower. And a lot of the yellows, and now I know some yellows that are really hard to root. The aforementioned Makaha Sun is really hard to root, or at least it is here. And it's a yellow, but it's got some red in it. So, but yeah, some areas are easy to root, some aren't. Some take a lot longer. Like I was explaining, if a cutting doesn't want to callus over and it just keeps bleeding. Years ago, I went to Hawaii with Eula Stafford, and we were going there to finish the registration for some of Jim Little's plants. And we were there, and he gave us cuttings of dwarf Richard Criley rainbow. And he had them, or he cut them when they were still hanging on the tree, just barely attached. So we took them back to the hotel, and they bled the whole time we were in Hawaii. You could not get them to stop. That's why, that was indication. We got them back here and they all died. And I hated that. But dwarf Richard Criley rainbow is one that you have to grab. Now, they may be able to root them in Hawaii, but I can't do it.
So Mark, if you have one that continues to bleed and bleed and bleed, then the option is, go ahead, just use one to graft it to give it a better root.
Yeah, if you wait too long and it starts to desiccate or shrivel up, it's gonna be too late to graft it. So if you go 3 or 4 weeks and it never will quit bleeding, I would graft it as soon as possible. I found some cuttings of, some after barrel cuttings laying in the yard after finally cleaning up and getting the fence off of them. And they had been there for probably 3 weeks, and I grafted those and they all did well. So it's possible to do that. Any more questions? Well, I thank you for being here.
You so much, very, very informative. We do have food in the back. I know some of you have not gotten up and gotten any. This is we're gonna go ahead and do our raffle, I think, right, John? We're gonna do the raffle next. So we'll do the raffle, and then I want you to hang around. This is an opportunity for us to be able to socialize, to ask questions of each other, to talk about experiences that you've had and things like that. We don't want everybody just to rush in, sit in a seat, listen, and then run away. We kind of want to get an opportunity to spread some of your knowledge, because we know we've got a ton of knowledge. In May, you're going to want to come back in May for our guest speaker, Sven, another past president, will be speaking to us about composting and using that compost as a fertilizer. And that's kind of how he fertilizes his planaries, and he's going to talk to us about that. So that'll be another really interesting topic.
Not to hijack Mr. Wright's presentation, which thank you again, Mark. These can be found on Amazon for like $22 for a dozen of them. So just search Amazon for little stainless. Well, hello, Gene Beck. You snuck in on this video. I didn't see you. My goodness. But yeah, Amazon. If you've ever heard of that little company. So how about doing a raffle? Somebody wants some cuttings? Raffle ticket. Okay, so
All right, he's going to get the raffle tickets, and I'm going to tell you how we set it up over here real quick. And then he's also gonna tell you where he got all these fine cuttings. In this box, just so you know, those looking for thinking there's something different in this box. All of these are the same cutting, the Canadian sunburst and sunburst are in here, sun, and then if you look, the ones that are in groups, so you can count leader in these frames, they are grouped, and that's kind of, we're just trying to kind of know what we have. Scott Pratt, there's some Thumbelina, there's Kenobi Sunset, and I know I'm saying that wrong, Grove Farm, there's some Slaughter Pinks. Anyway, as you go down a bell, and this whole bucket is full of Valentine. And here on the end is Pink Hawaiian Mistress. So just so that you know, they are separated, and you don't have to kind of go all the way through and keep picking them out here to know that there might be something different there, because there's not.
You're saying there's not any good cuttings in there? I heard you say it was not any good cuttings in there. Oh. So, as I mentioned earlier, the Matthews, Linda and Willard donated the ones in the yellow taping. So that's from their private collection for anybody who wants to know. Joan, what was the difference between the red and the green?
Nothing.
Just Christmassy?
Yes.
$514, ticket ending 514, green. No winners? Judith? Hang on, Mark, I'll call your number. Every time. 524, ticket 524. There you go, how you doing, Lisa? I'm good seeing y'all.